Welcome to Chapter 11, which covers the infant meal pattern, and this training is an overview of this topic. This training is presented by the Oregon Department of Education Child Nutrition Programs, also known as ODE-CMP. In this training, we will cover the infant meal patterns, including the 0 to 5 month old and the 6 to 11 month old meal patterns. This will include a review of developmental readiness for solid foods in the 6 to 11 month meal pattern. We will also address reimbursable meals and how that is related to responsive feeding, then go over infant meal components as well as additional requirements to keep in mind for the infant meal pattern. Once you have completed this training, we hope that you will understand the basics of the infant meal pattern, including all required meal components, recognize the signs of developmental readiness for solid foods, and know how to implement responsive feeding. As mentioned earlier, there are two age groups in the infant meal pattern, the 0 to 5 month age group and the 6 to 11 month age group. Both age groups are covered in the infant meal pattern chart you can see on the left side of the screen. At around 6 months, developmental readiness for solid food start, although individual infants may be ready at different times. It is important to work with the families to appropriately determine when infants are ready for solids. On the participant's first birthday, they will move into the child meal pattern, which is covered in Chapter 9. Sites and providers who enroll infants must offer infant meals. Not offering infant meals to infants in care may be considered a civil rights violation. The 0 to 5 month meal pattern only requires that 4 to 6 ounces of breast milk or iron-fortified infant formula are served for all meals and snacks. Infants at this age generally do not need any solid foods. The breast milk can be expressed and served in a bottle, or parents can breastfeed infants on site. Both expressed and direct breastfeeding can be reimbursed for CECFP. Any leftover breast milk should be stored according to local sanitation policies. All iron-fortified infant formula that is served must have at least 1 milligram or more of iron per 100 calories. All formulas offered must be regulated by the FDA. Once an infant reaches 6 months of age, the infant will move to the 6 to 11-month-old infant age group. In this age group, the infant will continue to be served breast milk or iron-fortified infant formula at all meals and snacks. The portion sizes increase a little to 6 to 8 fluid ounces for all meals and decreases to 2 to 4 fluid ounces at snacks. Once the infants are developmentally ready, it is important to gradually introduce solid foods. The rate of development varies from infant to infant, so some infants may be ready for solids before or after 6 months. All sponsors and providers are encouraged to work closely with families and follow the American Academy of Pediatrics, also known as AAP's guidelines for determining developmental readiness for solid foods. Here is an example of an infant who is developmentally ready for solid foods. You can see that the infant's mouth is open and ready for food. Having an open mouth when food is around or reaching for food when there is food around is one of the signs of developmental readiness. Another sign is seeing that the infant sits in a chair with good head control. In this photo, the infant can support his head and is able to look at his childcare provider while he is seated. One more sign of developmental readiness is being able to use their tongue to move the food from the spoon to the mouth. The tongue is not consistently pushing food out of the mouth. Let's try a quick knowledge check. What are the age groups in the infant meal pattern? Is it 0 to 3 months, 4 to 7 months, and 8 to 11 months? Is it 0 to 4 months, 5 to 9 months, and 10 months to 1 year? Is it 0 to 5 months and 6 to 11 months? Or is it 0 to 12 months? And the answer is C, 0 to 5 months and 6 to 11 months. Now let's go over reimbursable meals and responsive feeding. This includes understanding which meal types are reimbursable for infants, the maximum number of reimbursable meals and snacks, ODE-CMP meal times, and what that means for responsive feeding in infants. Meals and snacks that are reimbursable for infants include breakfast, AM snack, lunch, PM snack, supper, and evening snacks. This is the same as the child and adult meal pattern in CACFP. The CACFP only reimburses up to 2 meals and 1 snack, or 2 snacks and 1 meal per infant per day. For example, a child who receives a breakfast, lunch, and PM snack will be receiving the maximum 2 meals and 1 snack. This maximum reimbursement limit is true for all age groups participating in the CACFP. All meals and snacks must meet the infant meal pattern requirements in order to be considered reimbursable. Much like the other meal patterns, infants can only be served at an approved site for the approved meal and snack types and to eligible participants. However, what is different from the child and adult meal pattern is that infants do not need to be fed only at the approved meal times. This is because individual infants have very different needs, so childcare providers should be using responsive feeding techniques with the infants in their care. Responsive feeding means that childcare providers should feed infants on demand instead of on a set schedule. This helps infants to develop their hunger signals and sets them up for healthy eating habits. With responsive feeding, childcare providers only feed an infant when that infant shows signs of hunger, and the provider stops feeding once the infant shows signs that they do not want to eat anymore or that they are full. Experienced care providers can often recognize the early hunger signals. Recognizing these hunger signals help with responsive feeding. They include infants getting excited when they see food, rooting responses, which is when an infant turns their face closer to a touch, making sucking noises or motions, moving their head towards the food or spoons, reaching towards food, or opening and closing their mouths. Sometimes people think of crying as the only sign of hunger, but this is a late sign of hunger. It's often easier and less stressful for both the baby and the care provider to recognize and start feeding with early hunger signals. After the baby has been feeding for a while, infants will usually indicate when they are full. These full belly signals can be slower sucking motions or a cessation of sucking altogether. Babies may turn their heads away or fall asleep. Once they are older, they may push food away or seal their lips together. Sometimes it can show itself as distracted behavior, not paying attention to the food. Responsive feeding means that caretakers stop feeding once they see these signals, not when the bottle or bowl is empty. Let's check your understanding. What does responsive feeding mean? Does it mean feeding an infant on demand? Is it feeding an infant when you have time to respond, or feeding an infant only when a parent says it's okay, or feeding an infant on a set schedule? The answer is feeding an infant on demand and based on the infant's hunger signals. Now that you understand when infants should be fed, let's go over what you should be feeding them. The infant meal pattern includes 3 meal components: breast milk or iron-fortified infant formula, grains or meat alternates. Note that this is a grains-only component during snack times, and a vegetable or fruit component. Component requirements will be dependent on whether you are serving a meal or a snack. All foods that are served must be creditable in order to count towards the component. Creditable foods are defined as those that can be counted toward meeting the meal pattern requirements due to meeting the nutritional guidelines from the Dietary Guidelines of America. Each meal component has specific requirements, and we will go over them after we cover the required meal components for meals and snacks. There are some helpful resources that help to determine creditable foods in the infant meal pattern, such as the USDA's Feeding Infants in the CECFP Guide and the Food Buying Guide. Links to both resources are available in the description section below. Components required vary a little depending on whether it is a meal or snack being offered. Let's look at what is required during meals. Meals include breakfast, lunch, and supper. And in the infant meal pattern consists of 3 meal components: breast milk or iron-fortified infant formula, grains or meat alternates or a combination of both, and a vegetable and/or fruit or a combination of both. The solid food components are only required once an infant is developmentally ready. Similarly, in the infant meal pattern, snacks also consist of 3 components: breast milk or iron-fortified infant formula, a grain and a vegetable and/or fruit, or a combination of both. Note that it is grains only and does not include meat or meat alternates for snacks. Again, the solid food components are only required once an infant is developmentally ready. We will look at each of these components a little more closely to help determine which foods are creditable in each component. Breast milk or iron-fortified infant formula is required with all meals and snacks in the infant meal pattern. The breast milk can be expressed, meaning it is pumped and safely stored in a bottle, or parents can breastfeed infants on site. In both cases, you can be reimbursed for CECFP because parents can provide one component of CECFP meals. USDA and ODE strongly encourages all childcare sites to provide a safe and quiet space for breastfeeding infants if you have parents who choose to breastfeed on site. If you have parents or guardians who provide expressed breast milk, make sure that safe handling practices are used. Remember that all bottles must be labeled, and if you have multiple infants in your care, you must always check the bottle for the infant's name before serving. After you feed the infant, the bottles should be used within 2 hours from the beginning of feeding. In general, fresh breast milk should only be kept in the refrigerator for up to 4 days, and frozen breast milk that has been thawed should be used within 24 hours. Refer to your local health and sanitation office and follow their policies instead if they are more strict. For infants who receive iron-fortified infant formula, the formula that is provided must be FDA regulated and include at least 1 milligram of iron per 100 calories in order to be creditable for the CECFP. All prepared formula must be used within 24 hours and must be prepared with food safety in mind. This means only using water from a safe source, following instructions on the infant formula label, and handling the bottles safely. All sponsors and providers with infants in care must offer at least one type of iron-fortified infant formula. Sponsors and providers are not required to provide the exact formula that each family requests, although all formulas must be FDA regulated and iron-fortified. While parents or guardians can decline the childcare provided iron-fortified infant formula and bring their own, the sponsors and providers must not force families to bring their own formula or breast milk. Once an infant turns 1 year old or 12 months, they become a child and can transition from iron-fortified infant formula to whole milk. However, this transition can be difficult for some children, so sponsors and providers can continue to serve 12-month-old participants iron-fortified infant formula during this transition period. This 1-month transition period is meant to help the participants to adjust to whole milk, and during this time, the childcare provider can give either iron-fortified infant formula or whole milk depending on the needs of the participant. At 13 months, however, participants who are served meals with formula will only be reimbursed if there is a medical need as supported by a medical statement. If there are participants who receive breast milk, however, they can continue to receive breast milk since it is creditable and can be part of a reimbursable meal at any age. Do note that the breast milk served must be in the full serving size required for the age group. There are two other components served in the infant meal pattern besides the breast milk and formula, and both are solid food components. Solid foods should only be served for developmentally ready infants starting around 6 months old, which is why the portion sizes for solid foods start at 0 tablespoons. Once solids are introduced and accepted by the infant, meals and snacks are only reimbursable when the solid food components are consistently provided. Once the infant is consistently eating that solid food component, it is important to serve that full portion. This is the higher end of that serving size. For meals, the portion size of the solid component includes 4 tablespoons for grains or meat alternates, or a combination of both, and a total of 2 tablespoons of vegetables or fruits. For snacks, the solid food components include 4 tablespoons of grains only and 2 tablespoons of vegetables or fruits once developmentally ready. Grains can be tricky in the infant meal component. Once infants are developmentally ready for solid grains, the only creditable grain at meal times, like breakfast, lunch, and supper, are iron-fortified infant cereals. These are often the first grains that are served to infants. Iron fortification is important because it's a mineral that's not commonly found in a lot of the first solid foods served to infants, and it's important for brain development. Check the ingredient list on an infant cereal to make sure iron is listed. If iron-fortified infant cereal is not available, meats or meat alternates or a combination of both can be served instead, since it is part of the same meal component at meals and also are a good source of iron. Serving meat or meat alternates are often a good option if iron-fortified infant cereal is not wanted for any reason. There is a wide range of commercially produced meats, poultry, fish, and shellfish that can be served at meals. Whole eggs that include both the egg white and egg yolk can be served. For meat alternates, real cheese and cottage cheese are creditable. Cooked beans and peas, single component jarred baby meats and yogurt, including soy yogurt with no more than 12 grams of added sugar per 6-ounce serving, can also be served. Meat and meat alternates are only allowed at meals and not snacks. Moving back to grains, remember that at snack time, only grains are allowed. Meat or meat alternates would be considered bonus foods and would not count toward the required grains component at snack. Creditable grains at snacks, however, are expanded to include iron-fortified cereals and many other grains such as ready-to-eat breakfast cereals, breads, crackers, tortillas, waffles, and bagels. Ready-to-eat breakfast cereals must meet the sugar limit of having no more than 6 grams of added sugar per dry ounce. This also includes infant puff cereals. Remember that all items listed here, except for the iron-fortified infant cereal, are only allowed at snacks. The vegetable and fruit component is required for all meals and snacks once an infant is developmentally ready for solid foods, and it is a great way to add color and variety to an infant's diet. They can include fresh, frozen, or commercially canned vegetables and fruits. Jarred or pouched baby foods, including combination vegetables and fruit baby foods such as squash and pear pouches, are allowed. Remember to consider the food texture and the size of the vegetable or fruit when serving infants. Grapes, cherry tomatoes, and hard carrots can all pose choking hazards. While 100% fruit juice is creditable for the child meal pattern, It is not creditable for the infant meal pattern since juices lack the fiber and nutrients that a baby needs for growth. Along with juice, there are some other foods that are also not allowed in the infant meal pattern. Some foods are not allowed in CE-CFP at all since they pose a safety hazard. This includes home canned products and homemade yogurt. Others are not allowed due to CE-CFP meal pattern requirements that removes food items with excess sugar, salt, or fat, or low amounts of nutrients. This includes yogurt that exceeds sugar limits, yogurt products such as frozen yogurt or drinkable yogurt, cream cheese, cheese products, cheese foods and imitation cheese, freeze-dried fruits and vegetable snacks, along with other fruit snacks, juice, even 100% juice, grain-based desserts, and dessert baby foods. Finally, you have items that are only non-creditable and not allowed in the infant meal pattern because of the unique needs of infants. These include honey, which is dangerous for infants since it can contain trace amounts of botulism that an infant's immune system cannot handle. It also includes cow's milk and goat's milk, which are allowed in the child meal pattern, but disallowed in the infant meal pattern because infants should only have breast milk or formula, and nut butters, which can pose a choking risk for infants. The infant meal pattern chart is a helpful resource that provides information on required meal pattern component for each age group that was covered in this training. This can be a helpful resource for site staff, and ODE-CMP recommends that staff post the meal pattern chart in their infant rooms. This chart is available for download from the ODE-CMP CE-CFP meal pattern and menu planning page. This chart is available in English, Spanish, Russian, Simplified Chinese, Vietnamese, Ukrainian, and Farsi. We have another knowledge check. Ready-to-eat cereals which meet sugar limit requirements are creditable during breakfast in the infant meal pattern. Is this true or false? The answer is false. Remember that in the infant meal pattern, ready-to-eat cereals are only creditable at snacks, even if the cereal is otherwise creditable. There are a few additional requirements that sponsors and providers who serve infants need to keep in mind. This include parent and guardian provided components, meal accommodations, and infant menu record keeping requirements. Sometimes parents or guardians want to provide food items to be served for the participant during meal times. Parents and guardians can provide up to one component of a reimbursable meal for their infant or child. The food item that is provided must be creditable to count towards the meal. If you have participants with a medical accommodation, then the parents can provide more than one component as long as the sponsor provides one component of the meal. It is important to note that parents and guardians must not be coerced into providing any components if they do not want to. This flexibility is only allowed as a convenience for the parent and guardian and is not meant for sponsors or providers to offload their responsibility in providing a complete CE-CFP meal. If parents or guardians wish to provide more than one component, and this is not due to a medical accommodation, sponsors must not count that meal or snack for reimbursement. Let's look at 3 different examples. In the first example, you have a 4-month-old infant who only needs breast milk or formula. The parent decides to provide expressed breast milk for all meals and snacks. Would these meals and snacks be reimbursable? Yes, this is because the parent is only providing one component. Moving on to our second example, you have a 6-month-old infant who is starting to eat solids. The parent has been providing an iron-fortified infant cereal, but the daycare provider is providing the iron-fortified infant formula. Would the infant's meals and snacks be reimbursable? Yes. Again, the parent only provided one component. They can choose to provide a solid food component as well, as long as the daycare provider supplies all the other components, including the iron-fortified infant formula. Finally, let's look at our last example. You have a 9-month-old infant whose parent is providing both an infant formula and also fruits. The daycare provides all the other solid foods, including grains, meats, and vegetables during the day. Would this infant's meals and snacks be reimbursable? No. In this case, even though the daycare is providing all the other components, because the parent provided 2 components, these meals and snacks are not reimbursable. What happens when a family requests a meal accommodation for a participant? There are 2 types of meal accommodations. There are medical accommodations and meal preferences. Medical accommodations are accommodations that are medical or disability related, and sponsors are required to make reasonable accommodations for these types of requests. The medical accommodation must be documented with a medical statement or a doctor's note from a state-licensed healthcare professional or registered dietitian. In these types of requests, the meals are reimbursable even if they do not meet meal pattern. The other type of meal accommodation is meal preferences. These include cultural, religious, lifestyle, or other requests. Sponsors can choose whether they want to accommodate or not, but they must be consistent and follow their written policy. You cannot pick and choose which meal preferences you will allow. These accommodations can be accommodated with a meal preference form. In these cases, only meals that meet meal pattern will be reimbursable. For more information on meal accommodations, check out the Meeting Meal Accommodations training. Due to the flexibilities that are provided to infant meals, the documentation required is different compared to meals in the child meal pattern. Since all infants have varying nutritional needs, each infant will need to have their own daily menu record. On the screen are 2 daily infant menu record templates, one for the 0 to 5 month age group and one for the 6 to 11 month age group. Each template provides a table that lists out the requirements for each meal and snack. Actual food served should be listed, although serving size are not required if you are using the ODE templates shown on the screen. Parent-provided components must be documented on the menu. All sponsors must use the ODE-provided templates unless you have prior approval to use your own infant menu templates. These templates can be downloaded from the ODE CMP CECFP meal pattern and menu planning page. For more information on how to fill out the daily infant menu records, check out the infant menu record keeping training in this series. Time for another knowledge check. How many components can a parent or guardian provide for a reimbursable infant meal when there are no medical accommodations? Is it 0, 1, 2, or 3? The answer is 1 component. If more than 1 component is parent or guardian provided, the meal or snack will not be reimbursable. The only exception is when the participant has a medical accommodation, in which case the parent or guardian can provide all but 1 component for the meals or snacks to be reimbursable. For additional resources, check out ODE CMP's CECFP meal pattern and menu planning page and the USDA Feeding Infants in the CECFP guide. Both links are available in the description section below. In this training, we covered the infant meal patterns, including both age groups and developmental readiness, reimbursable meals and responsive feeding, infant meal components, and some additional requirements. ODE supports equity and excellence for every learner. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. Thank you for taking this training.